think we touched on it briefly in the last video, but the fact that people don't want to fail because in the moment it seems like they're the only one that's failed. And just what you were talking about, people, when other people fail, we're majority of the time really compassionate and compliment the people even for giving something a go and not giving up, and even though perhaps it didn't go the way it had planned to, they still carried on, etc. Do you think the fact that we put so much pressure on ourselves increases the stress of failure because we think that because it's us, people won't be compassionate perhaps, or that we're the only people in the world at that exact moment that has failed?
Absolutely. We put so much pressure on us that little thing actually becomes it becomes a mountain for us. This is our world on the moment, and there is nothing wrong about this. You know, it's we all have our thing that we are passionate about, that really carries for us a lot and all of that. And on the moment, this is the most important thing in the world. So there's nothing wrong about it. That's okay. And you know, you got to embrace these emotions that comes with it. It's part of it, and that's fine. But the thing is, it doesn't mean that you still should live in that unrealistic world to say that if you fail, this is what's going to happen. You need to start to, yes, acknowledge that's your world at the moment, and that there's nothing wrong about this, but you have to acknowledge the fact that if it does fail, it's not the end of the world. It is the end of returning a page, if you prefer. And the thing is, when we focus on failure and the fact that our world is collapsing, I think we're missing a very, very important point into that. Is if you focus on the fact that the world has collapsed around you, you're missing the fact that you can learn a lesson from it. So what have you learned out of that experience? Because what you have to bear in mind is what is important is not so much the result, because failure is a result, same as success. Success is just a different result, right? But in order to go from A to B, there's a journey. And during that journey, you're learning something. So don't focus on the result, focus on the journey, because the journey is what makes you grow and that type of thing. And out of that journey, you're going to learn a certain process. If you had a result that is not the one that you were expecting, then you know that you have to change something during the journey.
From a coach's point of view, are there any little tips and tricks that people could use, regardless of what situation they're in the times that they feel the stress of failure? What like little tricks or mantras that you could say, or activities that you could do to help relieve that stress of failure?
Yeah, well, there's quite a few things. So, you know, like we talk about the beliefs that we have behind failure in general. One of the generic work that could be done and that work for any type of stress in any type of situation, it's about you need to sit down at some point and realize what does failure represent to you. So once you acknowledge the fact that you have unrealistic beliefs behind failure, then you want to start to build more realistic type of thoughts around failure. So it's about like, okay, I want to go talk to that guy, to pick up the example that I was mentioning earlier. If he says no, what's going to happen? And it's about like, you know, getting a neutral perspective about what's really going to happen. And it's like, well, I'm just going to, you know, it's just going to be a deception on the moment, and that's about it. But I mean, you know, 2 months later, I might be hunting for someone else, you know? So it's really to think about this, to try to bring those really realistic thoughts. And the best way to bring those realistic thoughts is to discuss that with someone. You can discuss that with your friends. You can discuss that with someone that is external to the situation. It's going to help you, because they're going to help you to see the world a little bit differently. And they might going to tell you, oh, but it's not that much of a big deal, you know? And so the trick part here is the fact that people don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that it's not that much of a big deal, because for them, it represents the world. But the fact that you hear it, if you are open-minded, you can actually realize, actually, they might be right. Actually, it might not be that much of a big deal right there. So it's all about, you can have those conversations out here. If you have a coach, reach out to a coach and literally have those conversations to support you and coach you into that. Because it's really like, it's working on your relationship with failure and how do you feel about this. Then if you want to eradicate or if you want to work on stress of failure, depending on what it is, but you can have like, just a deep breath, a quick meditation that helps you to drop all that thing. It's about be aware of your emotions that pops up and all that. So basically starting to put in practice everything that we talk about in the previous videos. When you start to put all these things together, it's going to help you to reduce that amount of stress and to tell yourself, focus on the experience that you're going to learn out of it. Once you start to focus on the experience that you're going to learn out of it, then failure becomes kind of irrelevant, if you prefer.
Is there a way that you can validate someone's feelings of potential failure, but also try and help them see that failure is not the worst thing to happen?
Yeah, like acknowledging the feeling is a huge part of it. It has to be done, because if we don't acknowledge the feeling, we're kind of trying to lock the monster into a cage and it's going to go out at some point, right? So we need to acknowledge the feeling and say, yep, that's fine. There is nothing wrong. Embrace your stress, embrace whatever happens or whatever, say it's there. So because you say it's there, we can start talking about it, and that is completely fine. Now, it's always like, how much are you going to stick to that negative thought? It's always about that. So acknowledge is good, but if you spend too much time on it, it's going to become more than just acknowledging. It's going to become present. It's going to become that door in your mind that says, maybe I should take the stress door, right? So you acknowledge it, that's fine for a certain amount of time. Then you move on to, okay, now that I know that this is here and I know that this is stressing me out, what can I do about it? What is the action plan? What is the strategy that I can put in place to react to that failure, if that failure happened, right? So the strategy could be, what can I put in place to decrease my chances of failure? It could be that type of strategy, if it's possible. If it's not possible, it could be, what strategy can I put in place to maximize my experience right now? So if I fail and I try again, this time I'm going to be successful, And it could be, if we just take the example of baking a cake, I need to bake a cake and I'm stressed because maybe I'm going to mess up that cake and my friends are going to laugh at me, or they're going to think that I'm a terrible cook, right? So if I think about what can I do now to reduce my chances of failure, then maybe it would be like, maybe I should look for a recipe from someone well-known, or maybe a video that speaks more to me, because I don't know, for example, how to do specific things in the process. They seem quite complicated. So maybe I should have a look at the video that's going to help me more, right? Or if I want to be able to take action after my failure, I would be like, maybe I should write down every single thing. How do I put my ingredient? How do I do my mixture and all that type of thing? So if I fail, I'll be able to review it and I'll be able to change, tweak little detail out of that recipe. So next time it's going to get better.
So that kind of little action plan that you just gave an example of, can that work for all types of situations? So you just gave the baking example. Can that also work in a workplace situation or a personal family situation? Is that like a generic kind of plan that could be useful over all areas?
Yeah, absolutely. You can apply that to literally everything. Of course, for some situation, it's gonna sound a lot more different. Like, when you talk about baking, you're just looking for a recipe and like comparing two different recipes. But basically, if you put that to like a work environment or to a family environment or that type of things, it could be seen more or less the same, which is like, what recipe are you using? A recipe is a set of action. So basically, you are looking at a process, you're analyzing your process, right? So whatever leads you to a failure is a set of action. Once you understand what is that set of action that leads you to that failure, then you can change the set of action. You can change one or two action right there. So you're going to have a different result. And this is very important. I'm coaching communication quite a lot in companies and all that type of things. And it's very about one of the basic that we're talking about when I teach communication is the fact that you need to understand what is your communication style. How do you process things? And you need to understand that people, on the other hand, have a different communication style. They have a different process. So once you understand that your process and their process is slightly different, you understand that you need to be on a common ground. So if you fail at an interaction and you don't get the result that you want, then it means that your communication style wasn't the most appropriate one for that specific situation. So maybe you just need to change a little bit your communication style to have a better outcome. That's how it works. Look at the process, the set of action, and change the little detail.